In this tutorial, we'll start with the default cube and transform it into two new shapes, a Christmas tree and a snowman. Along the way, I'll show you how to make their textures switch automatically, add outlines to the render, toggle objects on and off during rendering, and even use a simple driver to tie everything together. Let's dive in. Hi there. Today we're starting with the default cube and transforming it step by step. First up, we're creating a tree. We'll set up shape keys, enter edit mode, and begin extruding downward to form the branches. As we go, I'll explain why it's essential to check the base shape when working with shape keys. Extruding here can sometimes cause issues, so it's good to keep things in order. Let's jump in and get started. After shaping the tree, I return to the original object to adjust the bottom faces. By scaling them down slightly, I ensure they don't overlap or interfere with the structure. This keeps the geometry clean and ready for further editing. To form the snowman, we continue working with the cube. I extrude the cube upward to create the body and then further extrude to form the head. The process involves scaling the sections as needed to give the classic rounded shape of a snowman. For the snowman's arms, I extruded cubes and shaped them into hands wearing mittens. This gives the snowman a cozy, wintry look. By adjusting the scale and positioning, I made sure they fit well with the snowman's overall design. To make the snowman's arm symmetrical, I duplicated one arm and then pressed S greater than x-1 to flip it. I added a minus sign to the x coordinate, which positioned the duplicated arm perfectly where it needed to be. This technique ensures that both arms match and look balanced. Now let's continue by forming the snowman's body, head, and adding details like the carrot nose, buttons, and scarf. Now that the carrot nose is in place, we should check if everything is in order. I will examine how the shapes blend together and ensure that the lower faces are properly aligned. This step is crucial for maintaining a clean mesh and ensuring that our snowman looks good from all angles. Next, we're going to create the snowman's facial features using UV spheres. I'll add two small spheres for the coal eyes and position them appropriately. Then, I'll add another sphere for the mouth and adjust its shape to create a friendly smile. Finally, I'll place a few additional spheres for the buttons down the front. These details will bring our snowman to life. Now, let's create the snowman's hat. I started with a circle and extruded it to form the shape of the hat. By manipulating the geometry, I can turn it into a nice cylindrical shape. This gives our snowman a classic look. It's important to adjust the proportions to ensure the hat sits perfectly on his head. To complete the snowman's look, I added a new circle and turned it into a scarf. Using simple extrusions and scaling, I shaped it to wrap around the snowman's neck. This step adds personality and a touch of warmth to our snowy character. Adjusting the flow and positioning ensures it fits naturally. Next, I'll create several shape keys for the snowman's arm positions to animate a waving motion. These shape keys won't be perfectly aligned with specific forms, making them non-relevant. As a result, they'll blend together smoothly during the animation, creating a natural, fluid motion. Right now, I'm focused on refining the shape of the arm, identifying areas for improvement. Small adjustments can make a big difference in achieving a more polished and natural look for the final animation. While adjusting the snowman's form, here's an interesting fact about Christmas symbols. The Christmas tree became a symbol of Christmas during the 18th century, 16th century in Germany, popularized by Martin Luther, who reportedly added candles to an evergreen tree to recreate the beauty of the starlit night sky. The snowman, however, emerged as a symbol much later, largely due to its association with winter and festive imagery. Snowmen gained iconic status in the 20th century through media like Christmas songs, cards, and decorations. Let's talk about some strange and funny Christmas symbols from around the world. In Austria, there's Krampus, a demonic companion of St. Nicholas who punishes naughty children. In Iceland, the Yule cat scares those who don't receive new clothes for the holidays. Catalonia features the Kaganer, a small figurine squatting in nativity scenes. And in Japan, Christmas isn't complete without a festive meal from KFC, thanks to a 1974 marketing campaign. In Sweden, Christmas wouldn't feel right without watching Donald Duck and his friends on TV. In Greece, they feared the Kalakansaroi, mischievous goblins causing chaos. In Venezuela, people head to early morning mass on roller skates. Meanwhile, in Norway, brooms are hidden during Christmas to stop witches from flying. It's amazing how diverse and quirky holiday traditions can be. Now, let's get back to Blender. I'm applying a black texture to the snowman's hat, while the stripe on the hat gets a vibrant red texture. I'm using the same red texture for the scarf to maintain consistency in the design. However, for the mittens, I'm opting for a separate texture, even though it will be the same shade of red. This way, I can maintain flexibility for adjustments later. I decided to take the textures a step further by adding a color ramp node along with some noise to simulate the look and feel of fabric. To enhance the realism, I also added a bump node, which introduced subtle depth and detail to the material. The result is a more polished and complete appearance for the snowman's accessories. For the hat, I applied a similar texture setup as I did for the scarf. Since the process is nearly identical, I won't go into much detail here. The combination of color ramp, noise, and bump nodes worked just as effectively to give the hat a realistic fabric-like finish. Now let's move on to a texture that will automatically change along with the shape. The first approach we'll explore involves the math node. This method allows for dynamic adjustments based on the shape keys, making the texture evolve seamlessly as the form transforms. However, using multiple math nodes can increase computational demands, especially for more complex textures like those on the mittens, tree branches, trunk, and the base cube, textured to resemble red clay. If your computer is powerful, this method can work beautifully. But for lighter setups, you may want to consider alternative approaches to maintain smooth performance. To create our dynamic texture, I start by taking the principled BSDF shader and moving it to the left. Then I duplicate it. Next, I add 2 mix shaders and 2 math nodes. I connect each math node to the FASI input of a mix shader, following the setup shown in the video. Now I copy the value of the shape key as a driver and paste it into the first math node's first value. This links the texture change to the shape key's value. The first value represents 0, and the second represents 1. You adjust the second value to the point where the transition should happen. For the first math node, I set this to 10, which means 1 is sent to the FAC input of the mix shader, driving the texture change dynamically as the shape key animates. For the second shader, I set a new transition value. In the math node, I change the operation to subtract for both instances. This allows finer control over how the texture blends during the shape key's animation. By carefully assigning these values, the second mix shader activates at the right moment, creating a smooth and automatic texture transition as the shape key progresses. This setup is both dynamic and efficient, providing precise changes that align with the object's form evolution. I didn't create a UV map for this project, so I used the Node Wrangler add-on to quickly set up texture coordinates. By pressing Ctrl+T, I added a texture coordinate and mapping node setup. Then I switched the projection mode to Object. This method simplifies the texturing process, ensuring the texture maps correctly without the need for detailed UV unwrapping, saving time while maintaining a clean result. For the first BSDF shader, I applied a texture that resembles tree branches to mimic the look of pine needles. For the second BSDF shader, I created a procedural texture that gives the appearance of rough, frosty snow. This combination of textures adds depth and realism to the model while maintaining a cohesive look between the transitions of materials. Next, I duplicated the procedural textures to create the materials for the mittens, carrot nose, and tree trunk. Each of these textures was placed in the second BSDF slot of their respective materials. Now I've placed a landscape in the background. This is just a personal touch. I'll apply the first texture here, starting with red clay, which will transition into green grass, and then finally transform into snow. This dynamic texturing will help create a more immersive winter scene, enhancing the overall atmosphere of our snowman and Christmas tree. For the tree trunk, I also unwrapped the UVs to ensure the texture projected more accurately, providing a natural and realistic appearance. This step helps to fine-tune the alignment and scaling of the texture on the model. Our coal buttons, scarf, and hat are separate objects. To simplify things, I've decided to set a visibility toggle in the render. This way, these elements will remain invisible until the object becomes a snowman. I did this by selecting the keyframe option. First, I added an invisibility keyframe on the timeline, and then a visibility keyframe. It's essential to have both. If you only add one keyframe, it won't switch properly. This ensures a smooth transition for our snowman as it comes to life. And now, the first version of this method is ready. In the render settings, I check the Freestyle checkbox to enable outlines, and then I select the folder where the frames will be saved in PNG format. This setup will allow us to create a clean outline effect for our snowman animation while ensuring that each frame is properly stored for further use. Let's see how it all comes together. For the second method, I removed all math nodes from the textures and copied the drivers from the shape keys. However, this time, the checkbox is enabled only on the relevant shape keys. But don't worry, we'll still switch between them smoothly, and the snowman's waving hand animation will remain intact. This approach simplifies the setup while keeping everything functional and looking great. And now, I demonstrate what happens when the relevant shape keys are enabled. As you can see, the animation breaks because the transitions between the states aren't handled properly. Then, I turn off the relevant shape keys, and the animation works seamlessly again. This shows the importance of managing these settings correctly. Don't worry, I'll guide you through the process of fixing this step by step. We can animate the switching of shape keys by toggling their relevant status, just like we can animate the visibility of objects during the rendering process. By doing this, we can control which shape keys are active at specific times, ensuring our animations remain smooth and visually consistent. And that's all for this video. If you found it helpful or inspiring, don't forget to like and subscribe for more creative Blender tutorials. Also, check out my Redbubble store where you'll find exclusive prints based on this video and the banana art from the previous one. See you in the next one.